almost caught us taking a selfie. The wonderful Linda Scott is here. The equally lovely James Ashby is here, and he's taking it just from a very, very long arm, a little further away. Mate, you're in the rainforest tonight. Are we sort of still up in Queensland, or where are you tonight?
Oh, no, I'm at home, mate, but I've burnt all the rest of the trees to that side of the property. So this is all that's left, mate.
Yep.
I'm weeping.
Mate, he's got a couple of bullocks and they're just doing all the work, just old school. I love it. All right. So these protests that have taken place over the past couple of days, now again, there will inevitably be an investigation about the 10 seconds of footage that we've seen, that I've commented on before, which is, hey, if somebody's biting you can understand how you would react. I don't understand the second officer in this, but overall, in terms of the police response, remember, these protesters, they were told not to be there. They appealed the right of whether they could be there or not, and they were told they shouldn't be there. They still turned up anyway, and when they wanted to go and do what they wanted to do, because they felt their cause was sanctimonious or important enough, well, the police met them and said, no. Now, again, far right, far left, pro, anti, whatever it happens to be, that's the law that has to apply to all of us. But, of course, we know that as many of the speakers among them, Grace Tame, and she was ripping in to globalise the Intifada, all the rest of it here. Now, let's be honest, she would want us to have a long conversation about her and about what her future is, about whether she does or doesn't get held up as a former Australian of the Year. I think the reality is that they're going to do nothing about all of that. So I suppose we should talk about the police part of this here, Linda. Is it what I've just said, which is essentially, yep, there's an issue that needs to be discussed. I'm not going to pretend that there doesn't. But if you're told you can't protest somewhere, you appeal you can't protest somewhere, yet you still turn up anyway, it doesn't matter what your cause is, they're going to stop you doing it.
Look, I'm a pretty simple person, Paul. Two wrongs don't make a right. And I definitely think that it's so important that Australians have the right to protest. It's so important that people have the right to express their views of, you know, agreement or dissent in a way that doesn't harm other people. And that's a difficult balance at the moment. And there's some very, very, you know, significant feelings on all sides of this debate that are playing out on Sydney streets, particularly over the last few days. You know, my friends and neighbours in Surrey Hills, you know, getting in touch with me saying, I don't quite feel safe to go out and walk the dog at the moment. You know, so it's been a really difficult time.
You can't blame the cops for that. They're not the ones that are bringing it on.
No, I'm not attributing blame to anyone, but I do think it is important to just bring the temperature down. In Sydney, on the streets, over the last 48 hours, it has been, in many places, pretty scary.
Sure, but doesn't that mean don't protest?
I think it means bring the temperature down.
100%.
I think it means obey the law. I think it does.
Then that's all I'm saying.
I think it does mean that people have the right to protest, but some of the footage we've seen today, Paul, and I think you would acknowledge this, has been pretty shocking.
I was very clear. Again, James, I was very clear here, right, which is, look, I don't want to walk a mile in an officer's shoes, but also I'm not going to just give free pass because I'm pro-cop, right? Someone will investigate this. We've seen 10 seconds. There's plenty of cameras in the streets, on the bodies that will give us the next 10, and then we'll all know, okay? And it'd be great for me to be shooting from the hip that this is Australia's next Rodney King or whatever that was being pushed around by some today, and there are others who go, oh, they deserve it. No, sorry, that's not the way it works. You actually have to wait and see. But what did you think about the overall police response? And again, that fundamental, they were breaking the law.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why Linda's friends feel very insecure about their safety across New South Wales. It's because the Minns government, and to his credit, Chris Minns did take action against these illegal protesters, had to place one police officer against every 3 protesters and took them off the beat in suburban areas where people are looking for that safety and security from police. Because we know that our entire New South Wales state is not free of crime. There would have been better ways to use police resources and emergency service resources, because it wasn't just police there. There was a whole lot of emergency services behind the scenes that were just waiting patiently in the event that something terrible did occur. So, Linda, you need to send a little fax or memo or text message to all those Labor voters who were there today protesting illegally. They're the ones who are voting for Labor. They're the ones who can't act responsibly in this country, and they're the ones that are costing tens of millions of dollars to the average taxpayer, who shouldn't have to foot the bill for this, by the way, It's time
James, I
take some responsibility and admit
see the
that your
day
people
when you
are
wanted to suppress
responsible
free speech.
for the terrible, terrible feeling of feeling unsafe on the streets of New South Wales.
Yeah.
You tell your friends that.
But okay, but my issue here, again, it's not about free speech or the rest, right? In that, okay, if there was an opportunity to argue against this law, there will be an electoral consequence as to whether people support this law or not, but it is the law, right? So it's not optional about whether it is observed or not. That's my point, right? Which is they were told you're allowed to protest, but you can't do it here. Now, the area was big. It's the CBD, it's the eastern suburbs.
The shoe was on the other foot, Linda would be having a go at the right.
We know they can cross the Harbour Bridge, so it's not like they couldn't have done something on the other side.
I've been really consistent about these things, and again, I just reiterate, I think the thing we all need to do here is bring down the temperature, right? We can say lots of provocative things.
Too late.
People will
These
get
are your
angry,
buddies.
but it doesn't help.
All right.
And I think we just need to bring down the temperature.
I want to get to the preferences question here because, James, again, there's a whole bunch of people, including me, who are sort of going, oh, let's gameplay all of this the next 2 years. What's going to happen? Let's pretend there's an election tomorrow. There ain't, okay? There ain't. So, yes, it is really interesting to watch in the polls, and because you are so far above where you were at the election, it's virtually impossible for the people who do the polls to work out 2PP, right? Interesting to see today they did a little bit of work about by actually asking if you're going to go for One Nation, where are you going to go? Or if you do with your second preference, what do you do? That's fascinating. So how do you respond to this question? Because you want people to back you, but you also don't want, presumably, a government you don't like to end up with 110 or 120 seats.
I think it's a really valid discussion to have now. We are 2 years out from this next federal election. We know that there is likely to be electoral reform ahead of that election because the Labor government are looking at increasing the Senate numbers by 16, which means there will be an additional 32 seats in the lower house that will be added to that number. Right. But I think as part of that, it is instrumental for One Nation to put forward a legislative bill which says we have to do away with compulsory preferential voting, because it's quite clear a lot of Australians do not want to put a number 2, number 3, number 4 against any other political party, particularly the Greens and Labor when you're on the Conservative side. But the way that the system is set up right now, we must number every box. And One Nation have advocated for the fact that we want optional preferential voting. That way, if you only want to put a 1 in the box, that's your call. If you want to number all boxes, again, your decision. You control your vote right now as it stands, but the mere fact that we have to number every box sort of does away with that one vote, one person represents one vote, because the vote carries in this circumstance. And it was designed, Howard introduced it, we should get rid of it, and that's on a state and federal level, because I think there's a lot of Australians that would back One Nation in that stance, and I think you'd get different electoral outcomes as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, Linda, what is fascinating, right, and obviously at one point being a candidate, helped by and hurt by preferences. That's the way that the world works, right? Now, in America, basically the way that we vote in Australia is how the people who decide the Oscars vote, right? And when the preferential system is being explained to people who don't understand, their brains explode, right? But one of the terms they use is a term called consensus voting, right? Which is that, okay, you might start out with 30 people here and 30 people there and 15 here and 15 there, but eventually you have to coalesce around something, right? But we also know that the Labor Party can sit in a position where 33% of the vote's going to back them in, but because the more centre-left that gets added to the ballot, the more preferences flow back because they agree with them. Nothing illegal about it. It means they can sit there with a third of the support that ends up being 90, 100 seats in the parliament. That does seem a little weird.
Look, I tell you what I won't do, and I will never argue to kind of fiddle the rules around to benefit the Labor Party. We've got to have a principled approach to our democracy, and James here is essentially arguing for a system that kind of fiddles the rules to benefit his party based on this polling. So that's disappointing.
No.
I think the other
adding
thing...
senators to help
Australians want to
your
put their
side
vote with one party.
We're adding... proposing to add senators to ensure that there's enough
and how many
representatives
ones of the centre right
You've
in the ACT
offices. Don't tell me it's a proposal.
In the ACT,
it's happening.
It's going to be Labor green, Teal green, right?
Well, that is a matter for the electors of the ACT.
And that's why they're extending the...
Well,
anyway.
What is also critical about this, though, James, is that people are starting to watch One Nation for the first time, and they're starting to see that you come on Sky News and say one thing tonight, and then your representatives go to Parliament in Canberra and they vote differently. Like, you come on here and advocate for cheaper medicines.
No, that's
you
the
go to
Labor
Parliament
This is the line of
and vote
attack.
against them.
Don't try and twist
come on
perception,
here
because
and
the
you
reality
argue
is that's what
for
Labor do.
limitations to all sorts of things about immigration processing. You go back to Parliament at the start of this year and your representatives vote against a whole range of
This
those
is interesting.
things. So
That is
I just
completely
think
untrue.
people
That
are
is
starting
just
to look.
utter trash.
Did you vote for the
Linda's
cheaper medicines bill, James? Did you vote for the same job, same pay
Well, James
legislation?
isn't an elected senator.
To do with
James is
immigration.
speaking as the
You're
chief of
1
staff.
second talking about
James, your
immigration,
party
then you
voted-
took the medicines. Hang on.
Your
This is
party
just
voted
utter
against
garbage.
all these things. You come on this show and you
you're
say you
just
want them,
potty
and then
mouth
your
trash.
representatives go to Parliament and they vote against it. So, James, people are starting to look. People are starting to look at One Nation, what they stand
And
for,
they're
what
welcome
they
to look.
say, and what they do.
But I
and there's
want
a gaping
transparency on
hole
Labor's side as
in
well.
the middle of
We
that,
don't get
James.
that. Labor speak utter
The
All right,
party
we've got to go.
have that accountability, and you don't yet, but it's coming.
And if you want to talk about something to look at, superprogressivemovie.com is a great film to go and have a look at. I love you too, mother. Love you too, darling. All right.
Authorised by Pauline Hanson, 12 Baronia Road, Brisbane.